Alright, time to make another video. Let's get this one done because I don't want to wake my roommate. So let's assess scientific racism. So, to explain the idea of scientific racism, it's fairly simple. Basically, it is the justification of racial prejudice via empirical means. So, let's look at it. Are the races different? Now, an egalitarian would say no, but I am no egalitarian. So, gonna be straightforward and honest. Yeah, they are. Averages exist. If you're gonna group people by collective, you're gonna find collective differences. It is true that we see 2 to 3 times the amount of black people per capita commit crimes than whites. That's just numbers. I say per capita because it's accounting for the lower population size of African Americans in the United States, thus leading to lower numbers overall. For example, if 60% of the country was committing 60% of the crime, that would make sense, right? The numbers would check out. If it was 55% of the crime, you'd think, okay, that's within a margin of error. Sometimes crime just happens to occur less among certain groups. However, if 20% of your country's population committed 40% of the crime, let's say, yeah, there's going to be some concerns there. At the very least, a notice that, okay, this is more than just random data. Now, if you actually look into it, it's usually the result of poverty, but here's the thing. Poverty often impacts cultures, especially for the long term. For example, rap music. Well, specifically, hip-hop. Now, I'm not going to complain about it. I actually listen to a few of them. I don't mind it. But think about the subjects for a lot of those songs. Crime, poverty, being in a gang, being violent, threatening others. Those are not normal things that are morally acceptable. The fact is, the community developed in large part because a lot of people in that community and in those areas had to deal with these things. In certain areas, you basically have to join a gang or die. In certain areas, you are the poor, and so you can't afford jack. That's just reality. And so that naturally results in their culture being affected by it. And without those leading the charge in terms of prosperity among their group, changing that image, that's what's going to stay with you when it comes to who people are going to emulate. There's some truth that people emulate those like them in terms of appearance. For example, plenty of people look up to kings of Britain, especially the English. Now, the current one isn't well liked, but plenty of people still look up to him. Same with Queen Elizabeth. A lot of people looked up to her because she was seen as a moral paragon. And this is especially true among communities. Local heroes are considered, heroes because of that exact reason. And very often, they look like the people they're surrounded by. King Arthur, for example, was a Celt, like everyone he served. And so, naturally, you get people who emulate those around them. But here's the thing. We can agree that the races have different stats, yes? And that some productions of them, like this, can demonstrate the scenarios in which they live. But here's the question. Does that mean we should collectively judge people? And I will answer this as blatantly as I can. No, 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 and no. See, collectives are not individuals. Now, when it gets to things like corporations or states, you can sort of see it because they do tend to act in a very uniform fashion. However, that is not the case with just collectives, considering their entire existence is averages. Black people are not a monolith. That's just a fact. They are different. As a result, they have different tastes, different ideas, different beliefs. Sure, they may have some similarities given their backgrounds, cultures, etc., but they're not the same. So I'm going to be really charitable to the races here and give some examples to demonstrate this. Let's say 9 out of every 10 of one group are criminals, okay? Again, being very charitable here. In such an instance, they would likely be the majority of criminals. I think that's 10. Yep. So, he has committed no crime. These guys, they're criminals. Let's say that 9 out of 10 black men are like this. That's not true, but let's just say it is for the sake of argumentation. Alright. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. As for these white men over here, let's say 1 in 10 is a criminal. Again, not accurate to the actual statistics, but for the sake of ease and because we're going to say kumbaya, let's say that is the case. So this one guy, criminal. These other guys, no crime. Now, here's the thing. Even if it were the case that, on average, these guys are criminals this much, and these guys are criminals this much, it still does not make sense to say we should judge them as groups because look right here and here. Would it not be better if instead of saying all black people are criminals and all white people are innocent, we said, alright, screw the criminals, whoever they are, let's embrace the people who haven't committed crime. Essentially, why should I care about the race if all the factors that you are telling me I should complain about can be boiled down to personal characteristics? It may be true that someone's religion makes them want to do things that I deem immoral. For example, Islam and genital mutilation of females. However, I don't need to hold that against all Muslims. All I need to do is say, do you support this thing that your culture commonly does or your religion commonly does? They say yes, they can go screw themselves. It's as simple as that. Boil it down to the individuals, and you can shatter racism within 2 seconds. Frankly, I'm surprised the left hasn't figured this out. Not really, actually, now that I think about it, because their entire ideology is collectivist. They can't make this discernment because fundamentally they're just looking at stats and saying, alright, well, we want to balance these out, so how do we do that? Freaking idiots. See, that's the thing. I can agree that sometimes it's good to be a bit more cautious. These are not the correct averages, easily, not even close. But the fact is that per capita, more black men commit crimes than white men. So it's understandable when you see someone of that background, your immediate thing is suspicion. But if you learn more about them, regardless of your initial suspicions, you should stop caring, or at least care less about their background. Now, we're humans. Tribalism is in our nature. It is our nature to associate and make comparisons. That's why I'm not denouncing someone for saying, oh, this person's part of a group that likely does this, so I'm going to avoid them. Humans are like that. Unfortunately or fortunately, our brains not wanting us to die tends to lead to such reactions. But, and this is the big thing and why I bring it up, regardless of tribal affiliation, regardless of whatever group you consider yourself a part of, what matters first and foremost is the individual. That is what carries. You could meet 100 people, all of the same race, and find wildly different results. And you can meet 100 people of different races and find very similar results. It all depends on the people and who you're dealing with. So I don't see any justification that's good for scientific racism other than I'm a collectivist and I finally actually acknowledge the reality that collectives are different. Yeah, I'm sorry, black people and white people are not the same. The fact is, they are different, the averages are different, and that's going to carry over. So instead of wasting our time collectively concerning ourselves with this nonsense, let's instead say, what do we think is good? Is it not hurting other people or committing crimes that damage society? Is it not treating women like pieces of garbage? Is it, actually being a decent human being? Alright, if a person meets that criteria, regardless of race, sex, or any other factor, they are acceptable. If a person breaks that, again, no matter race, gender, heck, I'd even throw in familial affiliation, treat them as appropriate. Kick them out and judge them for it. Scientific racism doesn't work because while it is scientific, it lacks the facts of individualism. See, it's still scientific in the sense that it's using empirical data. I won't deny that. But it's still wrong because it's like someone looking at a pie chart of people being stupid and says, yes, what would stop that? Us regulating all the stupid people. Little known fact, stupid people find ways to be stupid even when they are regulated. Just look at the military and privates. They had to straight up fix rifles because privates were sticking their own guns inside other guns' barrels. I'm not even joking, that's a real thing that happened. Stupid people are going to be stupid, bad people are going to be bad. It doesn't matter the race, sex, or anything else. And so, scientific racism is stupid. It's pointless, plain and simple. It makes no sense. Because you are ignoring the tree itself, and then staring at the forest and saying, oh, well, there's some degradation in that tree over there, and it seems to be quite common in this forest, so yeah, this tree I'm standing in front of must be infected too. That makes no logical sense. Humans may not always be rational, but at the bare minimum, can we at least, for the life of ourselves, accept that it's better to take 10 people who aren't criminals, regardless of background, versus 9 people who aren't criminals and 1 who is, just because of their background, or 5, or 6, or any other number. Like, it's not that hard. But enough of my exasperation. Have a good one. Goodbye.